Hi, everybody. John Farian here with LiveLARGE Universe, and I'm here tonight with Irene Henninger. Did I get that right this time, Irene?
You got it right.
That was the big debate right before the show started. Here was like, how do I pronounce her name right? Because my brain keeps wanting to say it differently than the way it's supposed to be. And as somebody who has a unique spelling of a name or pronunciation of a name, like that stuff's important. So here we are getting it right. So how was your weekend? Did you have a good weekend? Were you up on the snow? You were out today, weren't you?
Yeah, I actually, well, I just went out today, around the block, you could say, and I was definitely enjoying the blue skies on Friday because up in here in the Pacific Northwest, we have not been seeing too much of that lately. So yeah, I spent most of the day outside, multi-sport, actually off snow. Yeah, I went for a hike and went for a bike ride
Very
instead.
good. That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah, the winter season we've had this year, it's I found myself a little more than usual doing things like Jeep runs or off-road rides or motorcycle rides when the weather's even a little bit nicer, that kind of thing. And
mhm.
yeah, it's crazy winter for sure. And just this last weekend, I was out on Friday in beautiful sunny skies over by Mission Ridge. There was I think about up to about 10, 12, 13 inches of snow over there, and it was blown in some drifts like 4 feet deep and waist deep almost, and then there were spots where I was standing on like an inch of snow, right, depending on the top of the mountain where you're at. So definitely an odd season this year, and throws you off. And then the big joke this weekend, I don't know if you caught it, but I awarded myself a not so smart guy award this weekend by showing up to my own snowmobile club ride without a helmet. And so for all of you out there who've ever messed up and shown up for a ride without a jacket, a helmet, boots, or something like that, just know that you're not alone. Every once in a while, even the guy who prides himself in planning to the nth degree still messes up. So get out of my routine, and that's what happens. So has that ever happened to you, Irene?
I'm
Shown
not
up.
sure if it's happened with my helmet, but earlier this winter, when I was about to get out, I managed to lock my keys in the work truck, and
That
I had to
happens.
drive only about 10 hours to get them back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that was
See,
that was a full day that ended up being pretty wasted
yeah,
with driving to go
very
pick
good.
up kids.
Very good. Well, let's
Yeah.
get down to business here a little bit, and I'm going to remind the people who are watching your job is to go into the comments right now and let us know where you're watching from. So, right here, I've got Linda Hill Batterton. She says, I've done that as far as leaving something behind, keys or helmet or something like that. But Linda and everybody else who's watching, jump in the comments, let us know where you're watching from. And tonight, we're going to dive into a discussion a little bit about Irene, get to know her a little bit, her background. She's a forecaster for the local Northwest Avalanche Center. Some of you guys may know that I am also been with the Avalanche Center as a member of their board of directors for I think it's 6, 7 seasons now, somewhere in there. I think it was 2016 was the first year I started on it, and it's been an amazing run, amazing organization. And through that work on the board, I've gotten to know you. We've shown up at different events like NSA together and gotten to say, I think that was one of the first times I maybe met you in person was at an NSA event a few years ago, but maybe not. I don't know. What was your memory?
Oh, let's see. Yes, it was at the NSA, and yeah, it was this CD person who was kind of like, shifting around a little bit after I had been up on the stage. And yeah, you came up and introduced yourself and Edith, and it was great meeting you. And I'd heard your name before, and it was kind of that time when 2 years had passed since COVID, and finally
We all get to see each other again, right?
gatherings were happening. And
Yeah.
so, in reality, I hadn't met many of my coworkers in person yet. That was the first year where we're finally starting to meet in person.
Yeah.
So, exactly, yeah, I met you, and it was great to put face to a name.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's
That's
great.
that's awesome. So we've got Dave here watching from Stoneville, Wisconsin. I've got Scott Barton here locally in Puyallup. Linda Hill Batterton, you're in Oregon. So thank you guys for watching. Again, if you guys are watching, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're willing to share the show out, we'd love to have you share it out. And if you do, we've got a little surprise for you. We got a new prize pack. Earlier today, a few hours ago, I gave away the previous prize packs of the Mountain Lab saws. And this time, we're going to be giving away a first aid kit from Mountain Lab. So a backcountry first aid kit. It's about a $40 value, and just for sharing the show out, you're going to get entered to win that amazing kit. So thank you for doing that. So Irene, let's go into a little bit about your role. Let's talk about you a little bit. So just let us know a little bit about who is Irene. Kind of your background, maybe where you're from, your evolution from how you found snow and how you've ended up on snow. As far as an evolution between non-motorized and motorized, and just give us a little bit of a rundown on call it the commercial for who's Irene with NWAC.
Yeah, for sure. I guess you can say for myself, my fascination and love of snow started very early. I was raised as a cross country skier. I was cross country ski racing before I even have a memory of anything else, and so I was absolutely obsessed with it through my childhood, and it was just a blast. It was what I loved doing all winter long and all summer. It was my focus to get back to the snow for winter. Fun fact is I'm originally from New England, and even when I was a child, I would be out skiing on these snowmobile trails in backwoods New Hampshire and just encountering sledders out in that area as well, over on the other side of the country from where I am now.
I'm
And
going to
so,
interrupt because I don't think I knew that you were from New Hampshire. If I did, somehow it went over my head. But I actually spent a year and a half, or about a little over a year, about a year and a half in New Hampshire myself back in 1999, roughly, was the main part of it. I think we left right at the end of 99, 2000, and then we got there like mid 98.
yeah.
Was over there for work for a few years, and I got to go snowmobiling in the what is it, the White Mountains up there, up near Pittsburgh, New
Mm-hmm.
Hampshire,
Yeah,
the White Mountains. So that was pretty cool. And
definitely.
Mount Washington up there. A little fun
Mm-hmm.
fact is people don't know is that is the highest recorded wind speed in the world. I think over 300 miles an hour or something like that is up at the top of Mount Washington. That's my memory. So
Yeah, I think that unfortunately, or not, I think the number was actually just surpassed by somewhere in Australia,
oh
I
wow,
believe, in the last year or so. I could be wrong, but yeah, no, I mean, I
there you
would be
go.
saying that anyways. It's a very impressive place with
That could easily get by me
impressive
because I've
environmental
basically
phenomena.
shut off the news these days with all the bad news. I'm like, I don't want to hear it anyway. So
No, I get you on that. Uh
awesome,
huh.
awesome. All right, well, back to your story. You were in New Hampshire. You grew up skiing there, and let's keep going.
Yeah, so from there, I ended up going to 1 year of college in Vermont, but ended up moving out to Montana that summer to work for the Montana Conservation Corps, building trails and whatnot. And so when I did that, I ended up just falling in love with Montana, wanting to stick around there with my background of cross country ski racing and working at a Nordic ski area already. I ended up just working at a Nordic ski area out there and not continuing with college. I ended up working at this place my second year out there, which some of you may have heard of, the Yellowstone Club. It's a little bit out of the ordinary as
Yeah,
a ski area, private ski area that's for multimillionaires. But it's a great place for learning a lot, and you're treated really well as employees there. And so I had a blast ski patrolling there. I had so many impressive, just wonderful mentors who taught me so much, and I learned so much about snow and avalanches. And almost the entire time that I was at the Yellowstone Club, I didn't know what to do with myself for the summers. And so I ended up going to New Zealand and ski patrolling over the summers in New Zealand. So I had back to back winters for basically 10 years.
wow,
I ended up doing about 23 winters of ski patrolling.
holy smokes.
Yeah, and no, it was an incredible experience between both having awesome experiences at the Yellowstone Club and great mentors, and then the same in New Zealand as well.
So my
And
understanding, and I think I'm hearing you right, but I just want to confirm, is like basically you just kept chasing winter from the northern to the southern hemisphere, back and forth for like what, a dozen years or so, and you got like double seasons in every season. Like that's the most genius thing I've ever heard of.
yeah, no, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast with it. There's a few people who do it, some for a shorter amount of time, and others who keep on going. And so
Wow,
it's just been really cool, and it's definitely formed quite a bit of a community. And I formed connections all over the world from that experience, which
that's
I'm really,
amazing. Yep,
yeah.
very good, very good. Anything else you want to share about Irene, and anything we need to know about Irene before we get into your role as a forecaster at the Avalanche Center here in Washington?
Yeah, just from that it was ended up becoming a relatively easy transition, or just ended up coming back to the States and getting a job with NWAC, which brought me to Washington, which was a major transition for me, coming to a new place that I hadn't really thought of until I ended up getting this job, and I've grown to love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, how many years have you been with the Northwest Avalanche Center?
So I've been forecasting here for 4 years now.
Okay, and give us a little bit of an overview of what does a forecaster do. Again, I think some people know, but a lot of people who watch the show tonight won't have a concept of what does an avalanche forecaster do. Maybe it's obvious by the title, but let's give them a high overview of what that means.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of interesting. I'll just throw this back a little bit to my experiences in New Zealand, in that the last few years that I was there, I was running the avalanche program at one of the larger ski areas in the country at the Remarkables down by Queenstown, if any of you have heard of it. it. And so when I was there, I was writing an avalanche forecast for the ski area every single day in the morning. I would say, this is what we've got going on, this is the problems, and this is where it's going to be. And then we would go out every day and test it with explosives or ski cutting, or maybe there wouldn't be avalanche problems. And so we would confirm either through results or not having anything what the conditions were like out there for the day. And I would say that by having had that experience of having a forecast and then testing my hypothesis out on the snow every single day was what enabled me to be able to become a forecaster at NWAC and really make me feel more confident in my role now. And so now, as an NWAC forecaster, I'm writing that avalanche forecast every day. And what we do is we write it in the evening, and then 12 hours later is when it goes into effect that next morning. And so I'm writing that forecast. And what I will say now that I work for NWAC is that this is the closest thing to an office job I've ever had in my life. At least about half my time, 20-ish, 15, 20 hours a week or so in front of the computer.
Okay.
Writing the avalanche forecast, compiling information, getting observations, putting in my own observations. And so we do spend quite a bit of office time in there, which happens to be at my home. So that's good or bad, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. And so then the other half of the time, which averages out to just under 2 days a week, is when I'm in the field. Okay. So now that I'm an avalanche forecaster, I do spend far less time in the snow than I've ever spent in my life.
Wow.
It's a bit of a surprise, but with how we work regarding the number of forecasters we've got and the amount of avalanche forecast writing that we have to do, that's what works out. And I just think that having had that previous experience with going out and testing my forecast every day and getting a feeling for what's going on in the snow versus what I thought in the morning was such a good background for this. Yeah. So in addition to us getting out about every twice a week or so to check out what's going on in the snow and to confirm based on what other people have said what's happening, every day we're on the phone talking with people or texting or just in constant communication with people that are in the zones that we forecast for. And so for me, I forecast primarily for the West North and the West Central zones. The West North is most well known as the Mount Baker area. And then the West Central zone is this area that's between just north of Snoqualmie Pass all the way up to the Highway 20 border. And these are both on the west side of the Cascades. And so I have a lot of communication with guides and the ski area and other folks that I know, just members of the public who are out there skiing or sledding around or something out in the generally in the Mount Baker sort of area, and especially in the West North where I get a lot of information from. The West Central is a bit more obscure, and I'm really lucky today. We actually got 2 observations in the West Central, and nice. That's huge for us. And so, yeah, just hearing information from people about what's going on is so critical and such an important part of this job. And it's what helps us be able to write better avalanche forecasts for people.
Yeah. I'm going to interject for a second here and just make sure that the audience understands, you know, an observation is basically you and I, everybody, you know, myself as a user and everybody in here. I've got, you know, Scott, I've got Todd, I've got Jay, Milo, Kelly, all of these folks out here who are in the backcountry on a weekly basis. For your avalanche centers across the country, you can do the same thing, right? Like not everybody's here from Washington. Some are, you know, ride once a year in West Yellowstone or somewhere. But by submitting an observation, we're going to go into that in some detail tonight, a little bit later, once we do kind of a demonstration here of how you guys can submit an observation. And the observations and this particular app we're going to go over tonight is the Northwest Avalanche Center and the Sawtooth Avalanche Center. And so it's the same app, you know, as far as the back end, how it works, but there's like an initial link you can click on for whichever area that you typically are riding in if you're in Idaho versus in Washington. But keep in mind, a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is probably 80-90% applicable for any Avalanche Center across the United States, right? They can go onto an Avalanche Center website at the end of the day. They can submit observations almost always. If nothing else, I'm sure every Avalanche Center has an email that they can submit information into. So we're going to go into that in some level of detail tonight. But, you know, for you guys who are watching, pay attention because this is really an interactive show tonight where we're going to give you some information, some share. But the expectation is that everybody goes out and in the next couple of weeks, let us know if you come back into the comments that you've submitted an observation. We'd love to know that you guys are out there making a difference because professionals like Irene here absolutely need that information because, just to summarize, you guys are getting information from like the Department of Transportation, local ski hills, local ski guides. There's more and more and more people on the professional side, which is awesome. But sometimes there's areas that us as recreationalists are going into that aren't typically visited by maybe these professionals, and they're just adjacent to or just down the valley further or something. And we're going to see something that the professionals aren't. And believe it or not, I think there's even times where we speak kind of, we joke around about one of your coworkers, Dallas here. He says snow slang all the time, right? He goes, we speak snow slang, meaning like whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it wet slushy snow, if you want to call it heavy wet snow, whatever you want to call it, the Avalanche forecasters are, they're fluent in snow slang, and what that means is they can take anything you tell them and they can turn it into some good information, and especially photographs. We're going to get into all that kind of stuff tonight too. So, what else you want to chat about here too before we go into? Oh, I know one thing actually. You didn't mention it yet, and it's to me the most important part. That as a forecaster over the last few years now, you guys have had access to snowmobiles to be able to access the backcountry. Tell us a little bit about how you're using a snowmobile in your role, how that came to be, and how you're enjoying it, and how you're getting integrated into the snowmobile community here in Washington.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that I've been most stoked about lately. And thank you, John, because I know that you did have a fairly large role in, or fairly instrumental in creating this wonderful relationship that we have with Clem's Class Power Sports,
Yep.
with getting sleds for the forecasters to use for the winter.
Yeah,
So
that was
much.
awesome. Yeah, several, I don't know, remember it was 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago at least, made an introduction between the owner of Clem's, which is one of my show sponsors. Actually, right above my head right here is Clem's logo. So they're one of our show sponsors here as well. And made the introduction between them and the Avalanche Center, and the rest is history. We've been able to, I think, almost every year. There's been a couple of years where there was, product shortages. I think it was back one of the COVID years where players didn't have sleds that they were shipping out on time, and so we couldn't get any that year. But virtually every other year, we've had access from 4 to 6 snowmobiles for the forecasters to use across Washington State, which has been a huge deal because it's really given folks like Irene here to, the ability to kind of get on the snow and get into areas that we would ride in because, give us a quick, just a super quick comparison between what your typical day before you had access to a snowmobile to get your forecast done versus how you use the snowmobile now, and what that means in as far as how deep you can go in the backcountry, how much more data you can get. Give us some quick samples of the contrast between the two options of no snowmobile versus snowmobile.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's huge, especially in the zones that I travel in. But in reality, it's a lot of the zones that we cover here at NWAC, where you can only access very few locations, getting quick and easy out onto snow if you're human powered. Really, essentially, in both the West Central and the West North zones, the only easy location that you can get to is Heather Meadows out by Mount Baker ski area. From there, I ended up doing, aside from Heather Meadows, I would do driving up in the West Central, especially as far as I could, up a little, obscure Forest Service road, seeing how far I could make it before I had to transition to skis. And then I would skin up the Forest Service road. And then from there, I'd find myself on a hiking trail, winding my way up. And I'd be so lucky to be able to make it just barely to tree line where I could maybe get some views and dig some pits and some open fields before making it back down, just barely by the end of the day before it got dark.
Amen.
And so really having sleds has enabled me to access so many more places now in the West Central where there's not really any easy access locations. I can drive up, take my sled out, sled up the road to be able to start sledding from, or maybe start skiing from 3,500 or 4,000 feet. But in reality, I do that for sure. But I also spend quite a bit of time heading out to snow parks and getting together with other sledders. And just being able to cover mileage with sleds is absolutely incredible for getting more observations for myself in a day. Really, it's just become, for me, the best tool for the job when it comes to getting field observations. But the one other thing that I really want to add to that, because it's been absolutely critical, I think, it's been an awesome experience for myself, is just connecting with the motorized community. obviously from a work standpoint, it's great, I think, to be able to, have this connection with the motorized community. But in reality, everybody's been absolutely incredible. They've been super generous and friendly and helpful, and I've just been absolutely stoked to be welcomed into the snowmobile community, and just had some amazing mentors to learn sledding from, and just getting out with a fun group of people out having fun in the mountains, and just obviously like it's a great time having fun, but getting my work done at the same time. So yeah, it's been a really awesome experience. Just picking up sledding and getting into it more and more, and while at the same time being able to just get great information from different places in the snow as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I think if you're ready, I'm ready to dive into the demo of the app. Is that something you're ready for
Yeah,
yet?
for
All
sure.
right.
That sounds
Give me
good.
just a second here to make some transitions. And I'm going to be doing a screen share here for everybody. Let me make sure I'm highlighted on that first. And then I'm going to share the screen. There's a couple of steps here, so give me just a second. And there we are. All right, so we have Irene in a picture, and we have the app over to, if everybody's looking at you, it's over to their right. So, as you talk through it, what I'll be doing is kind of walking through. So this is an actual live demo. I'm on my computer at home here. I have the app downloaded to my Apple computer, and I'm going to walk it through it as Irene talks about it. So Irene can't see what I'm doing, but she's just going to talk through it. She might have her phone there in front of her, and then if I need to interrupt or pause and clarify something, I will. But for the most part, I'm going to let her do all the talking now, and I'm going to walk through it with everybody. But Irene, everybody's looking at just the map of Washington State, the Cascade Mountains. We have the Olympics. We have Mount Hood on the bottom down there in the very bottom. And the one thing I'll let everybody know is that the first time they download this app, the app will ask them, are they wanting to go to the Northwest Avalanche Center or the Sawtooth Avalanche Center, right? And then once they've logged in once and then go in, each time they go in after that, it should auto, default based on their location of which location they're going to be in. So we're going to walk through the Washington one tonight, but just know that the Sawtooth Avalanche Center, the experience should be almost identical, short of it just being a different area on the map. So, all right, Irene, it's over to you.
Sawtooth Avalanche Center,
Did
which
I
I know
say that?
you know.
Oh, did I say Sawtell? I said sorry.
Yeah,
Sawtooth Analytics
that's
Center.
right.
My bad. My bad. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, and so I think so. John's showing us home screen here, and just a quick introduction about this app. In addition to what he just covered, is that this is our initial run on it this year. We've just created it with a bunch of incredible primarily are all volunteers that have been creating this app. And we're absolutely stoked to be having this something that's making avalanche forecasts more accessible to the community. That's really what we want to do, is just make it more accessible and easy for people to get to. And so the thing about this app that we're working on is just we're in this preliminary stage here where it's us at NWAC and then the Sawtooth Avalanche Center that are running it for this year. And then we just hope that more centers over the years will pick it up, so that ideally, no matter where you go in the US, most, if close to all of the avalanche centers will be using this app. So you can use this app to be able to look at all of the different avalanche centers, the avalanche forecasts, and the other information which is provided on this app, which I'll be going over right now. So yeah, this is something that we're just super excited about. People have been asking about it for years, and we're stoked to be running it out.
Very cool.
Okay. So from this homepage, you will just get this preliminary image of what's going on in throughout the Cascades, the Hood, and Olympics. It's the exact same thing as what you get when you go to the www.nwac.us homepage as well, up in that top left corner. And so what happens from there is that if you want to know more about the zone, because all you're seeing right here is the colors, which relate to what the avalanche danger is for the day. And I hope that that's not going to be enough information for folks getting out. Just diving in at least a little bit more to get a little bit of text and description about what's going on is something that's really important for being able to get a better understanding for what's going on with avalanches that you might be encountering in the backcountry. So what we'll do from here is we'll click on the west-north zone, since that's sort of the zone that I'm most familiar with. And so at first, when you click on the zone, it'll just give you a quick run through. It'll give you the date so you can make sure that you know you're on the right date. Say, like, I just wrote the avalanche forecast before hopping onto this show with John right now, and so you have to it comes out at 6 o'clock, and it's for the next day. So if you're looking at it at 4 o'clock, it's just about to end at the end of the day, and so it's really important that you make sure you've got the timing right for this. So it's at 6 o'clock that it comes out. And what we've got on this first preliminary page is the bottom line information. And so the bottom line just dives into a little bit more about what's going on with what the avalanche problem is, where you might find it, and what to do to, or what slopes to avoid. And so I just kept it pretty short and sweet, as we tend to do with, we've got problems from wind. So like wind drifted areas are where we have concerns, to avoid steep wind loaded slopes is basically what we're saying in the bottom line. And that's for today. Probably might have been from a few days ago that you have that image, John, I'm guessing.
Yeah, this is the live one that's up tonight. So the one we're looking at right now is published today, and it's good through tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Yeah. Okay. No, never mind. That is real time. So yep. That's great. Okay, great. And so once you click on that and you click on the text for that bottom line, it brings you into the entire avalanche forecast. So this is all information that's also easily accessible just from the website, but it might be quicker and easier to take a look at it on your phone as well. The good thing to know before diving into this further is that if you open it up when you have service, say before you go out for your day in an area without service, this information caches. And so as long as you go to the app and open the app before you head into an area that's out of service, you will have this information saved in your phone. And so you can look at it once you get out there into the field or into a place where you might not have cell service anymore. But make sure you go and open the app before you go out into an area without service.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So from here, you are in the avalanche forecast, and it has that bottom line information, that first little bit that you got on the previous screen. And then from there, it takes you through the entire forecast, where we're talking about what the avalanche danger is at the different elevation bands, and then what your avalanche problems are. And so for tonight, we have wind slab avalanche problems. And you can open those sections up and take a look at the text, which will provide more specific details. And so this is all information which becomes a little bit more detailed, basically, the further you go down in the avalanche forecast. And so if you want to find out a bit more about what's going on and just dive a little deeper and get a better idea of what's happening, this is where you do it, just taking a look by going a little bit further down in that forecast. And so we describe the problem, where it might be, and what to do to avoid it in a bit more detail in that avalanche problem section. And then, and sometimes there might be 2 avalanche problems. Unlikely that there's 3, but there's possibility that there might be up to 3 problems. And then from there, you go into the forecast discussion. And this is just kind of a little bit more detailed information. It might be about the avalanche problem or other stuff that's going on in the zone. And so this is just kind of, the basic critical information that we want to relay to you in order to just have you get the best idea about what's going on, usually specific to avalanche concerns that are happening in the zone that you're going to be traveling in. The other information that we've got, that's just super handy, and I think everybody really enjoys, and we sure do as forecasters as well, is photos. And so usually with an avalanche problem, we will provide a photo saying, something specific or related to what the avalanche problem is, like, oh, wind slab's the problem, and this is a wind slab, or this is wind loading, or this is long shooting cracks that might be occurring going out from your feet or sled or something, which might be an indicator of weak snow. And then same thing with the media. It's recent things that we see. And oftentimes we draw those photos from observations that people send in to us. We get them from all different sources, but so many of the ones that I've used recently are ones from recent observations that folks have just submitted through the app, which is really cool that we've got. Okay, great. Any other things I should cover in that section?
No, I've walked everybody through that as you talk through it. I think it's awesome. One thing I think we could touch on quick is there's the elevations of upper, mid-level, and lower, and depending on where you're at in the country, those are kind of like, even Avalanche Center here in Washington, I know we had done it slightly different before, where it was, above tree line, below tree line is how it was listed. Some Avalanche Centers may still do that. Do you want to touch on maybe the way it's broken down now and kind of the intent why we changed in Washington here to this updated version? So.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that's kind of been a bit of a touchy subject in that there's always been questions about, well, where does tree line end and where does near tree line start and that sort of thing. It's always been this vague area that previously we've never provided actual specific elevation locations for. And so we wanted to get away from the more questionable like uncertainties with elevations and whatnot and go more specific with actually providing like hard numbers. That being said, what's really important to know, both within our boundaries of the zones themselves and the elevation bands, is that there's not a black and white, oh, you jump from one zone to the other, which means you immediately go from low avalanche danger to moderate danger as soon as you cross that line, or same thing with the elevations. You go from low avalanche danger at mid elevations to moderate avalanche danger at high elevations. And so, or upper elevations. And so it's really important to know that there's a fairly large gray area between those zones, whether it's elevations or geographical zones. And so that's an excellent point that you brought up, John, with just, it's something that's really important to like take with a grain of salt, that even though for the West North, we say the upper elevation band starts at 5,500 feet, you might be seeing something at 5,300 feet that might be more applicable to the upper elevation band. And a lot of that is just the difference between maybe there just being 1 or 2 degrees of temperature change, which, I mean, I feel like everybody probably has a pretty good impression that, you know, or weather forecasters might struggle with, you know, getting down to the exact degree of, you know, 1 or 2 degrees difference, which might mean the difference between snow and rain or something like that, which could be the difference between different avalanche problems, or dry avalanche problems. And so, yeah, we try to be as accurate as possible. And that gives people a bit of a better impression of, you know, where to be looking for these avalanche problems and what the dangers are at those different elevation bands. But yeah, it's the best overall image. And then obviously just, you know, take it with a grain of salt is the important thing to
Absolutely.
think about.
So I've got an interesting comment here in the comments, and it's from somebody that I know, and I hope you know. If you don't, we're going to make an introduction. Is a gentleman by the name of Robert Lind, who is the new owner of R&R Grooming, which is the groomer that goes out of the Yakima side, right? And they actually go from Greenwater to Yakima back and forth through that kind of, it'd be the central part of east and west slopes he covers. And he has offered, if you don't already have his info, like he's offered to give you a snowcat ride and get you out into some other areas that you've never maybe been into yet. Might be kind of fun to take him up on that at some point if you're interested. And like I said, I've got his contact info if you need it. So
yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, Robert. Yeah, and I think we did meet and communicate already, and I'd love to keep it going.
Awesome. All right, where do you want to go next? Should we go into weather then, or?
Yeah, great. So let's just follow across the sidebar, or the bar that's along the top of the specific avalanche forecast. So from avalanche, we go to weather. And so what's interesting or important to know about the weather when it's within a zone, this is the weather that is specific to that zone. So that's put out by the meteorologist that's working on duty for the day. And they will put out the weather details that are specific for that zone, which you can work your way through. And then the other thing that's in that weather section as well is any weather stations that are NWAC operated that are in that zone will be here as well. So at first you've got the weather forecast, which was put out today. And that obviously provides temperatures, snow lines, what the wind's going to be doing, and details on those for today and possibly into tomorrow. And then from there, the weather data below says Mount Baker ski area. So that's the only NWAC weather station that is in the west north zone. And so once you click on that, you can find either the 24 hours or 7-day information on the weather that's we've got from that weather station. People also call it telemetry as well, and it basically goes interchangeably between weather stations and telemetry, in case anyone was curious about that.
So can I interrupt for just a second? Because I think there's a really good tip here for everybody that maybe they're picking up on, maybe they're not, is that a lot of people think of the Avalanche Center apps or websites to just tell us about avalanche danger, right? But the reality is if you know how to use the website to its fullest extent, or the app to its fullest extent, you can also use this information, as we're seeing here, on weather data, which is going to tell you things like precipitation, water content, wind speeds, how much snow maybe, and it might help you identify where there could be some good snow to go ride, right? And so that's not necessarily how it's advertised, but I can speak for myself and say that I leverage this weather data along with some DOT weather data, along with the Weather Service weather data, and I kind of compare and match all of them and just see kind of where I feel like I'm going to get the best snow. And just as recent as this last weekend, I had made some last minute decisions based on the storm that came through of moving a ride from one location to another based on snow, so it's a great information to have. So, all right, back to you.
Yeah. Excellent part, John. Yeah, I agree. Usually you can scroll over and see what the snow is and whether we got any new snow, which is kind of that big thing that everybody's wanting to look at those different weather stations that we've got throughout the zones. Great. Okay. From there, the other thing that we'll hop to on that bar that's along the top is observations. And so one thing that I'll add, because I'll dive into observations just a little bit after this, but these observations are specific to ones from that zone. And so we were in the West North zone. And so now this is observations that are only for the West North zone, as opposed to when you come up to the website or look at the general observations page, it provides all the observations from all the different locations that we have in NWAC. And so, great. I'm going to jump off for a second before diving into more details on submitting an observation. From here, let's just go to the bottom where we've got the zones, and then you can follow along. And on that bottom tabs, we have observations next. And so that is where, as I said, you can go to a location where you can view all the observations in all the different zones. And so what's important to know in that either of these locations, this one or in the other one specific to the zone, is that there's a quick and easy submit button, which we've got over here in the corner. And that's a way for you to be able to easily share the information that you saw in your outing during the day with us here at the Avalanche Center. And so if you click on that, what ends up happening is that from there, you can provide, we ask you a bunch of, we give you prompts. So there's a lot of kind of quick and easy details that you can provide. What's really good to know is that you don't have to share your name. And if you want to say that it's private, it means that only the forecasters will see it and everybody out there in the public won't see it. Another thing that's really good is just write down beneath privacy and, say the photo usage as well, whether it's all right for us to use your photos or if you want them to be anonymous and not have your name on them. That's something great. That's for sure, share photos, but you don't have to have your name on it. I think that's something that's really important. I don't want my name on a lot of the photos that I take out here in the different zones half of the time. And then even if you provide your name, like we ask for in the general information, right beneath it, it says show name to public. Like, even if we know your name, it doesn't mean that everyone's got to know your name. And so you could just put in whatever name you want as well.
I mean, Irene, I might be playing hooky from work that day. I might be calling in sick. And if I'm going to submit an observation, I may not want my name out there in the public. Let me just say that out loud, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. And if that's the case, you can call yourself Gobby or something. And that's fine. Or you can provide us with your name and just say that you want your name not to be shown to the public. So you can do whatever you want. The world is your oyster with this app, right? And so that's the thing is like, it's awesome if you share this information, but you don't have to share it with the public if you don't want, especially in the West Central zone, but just in general in any of the zones. If we get interesting observations or ones that we have more questions about or something, like I always love to email people and say like, thanks for the observation. Once again, especially in the West Central zone, I sent out 3 emails today thanking people for observations and asking 2 of them about more details as well. Perfect. Because something that's just super useful and good to know. And people have been awesome with responding and saying like, oh yeah, cool. So it's been great kind of having that connection with folks. And that's something that I love in general with avalanche forecasting is that I love connecting with the community, whether it's, personally emailing somebody to say thank you for an observation or just seeing folks out on the slopes or seeing them, anywhere down around town or whatever. I just think it's great connecting with people. It's one of the, I think, more important parts of the job that I absolutely love. Yeah, and so from there, like, you provide the details that are the same as ones that you provide on the website as well. It's all pretty straightforward. What activity that you were doing and where you were. That's something that's another hot topic, I know, and all the different communities with people not wanting to share their exact location. And this is something that I will say, I think it's a less of a big deal than a lot of people make it out to be. But at the same time, I completely get it. And because of areas that I travel and I know people are sensitive about it, I try to be oftentimes fairly vague with my locations as well. I don't want people getting upset at me.
Yeah.
And so you can just provide, say, the drainage or the snow park that you're at, or,
Well, I think the easy
nearby.
way to, but the easy way to resolve that, right, is like if somebody really truly doesn't want their honey hole given away or whatever, is just make it a private observation. It doesn't have to necessarily be public, right? But at least then the
Totally.
Avalanche Center forecasters are getting the information,
Mhm.
especially if they're seeing if you've gotten a photo of like an avalanche or you've triggered an avalanche, and maybe there's a lot of reasons you may not want to be known, but you can make it private or public right here at the top of the website or at the top of the app here.
Yeah.
Really easy. So, bottom line is every time you go out, always submit an observation if you can, because, frankly, if Irene and her peers get too many, they'll start saying, hey, we're getting plenty for this area, or whatever. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Right now, every time you guys get an observation, you're comparing it to the other observations, your own information, the professional observations, and you're looking for consistency in the stories. And at some point you get an anomaly. All of a sudden, everybody else says, "Oh, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing it." And all of a sudden you get a picture of an avalanche. Guess what? You guys are going to pay really close attention, and make sure you dive into that. And I've witnessed it where, and I've heard stories from from other forecasters like yourself, where information has come in through the day that maybe isn't something that was generally observed, but something like an avalanche can absolutely change at a last minute the forecast intent for the following day. Or if it's after hours, you guys can put out an advisory in the morning with an update, right? So
Yeah, we can do updates in the morning, which we do at the standardized time of 7:30 in the morning. Um, we try not to do it, and usually we oftentimes will maybe put in a bit of a warning in the night's forecast. We're saying like there's a lot of uncertainty about what this weather system's going to bring in. It might bring in 6 inches or a foot and a half of snow. We have no idea, so we might update in the morning. That's usually like a good example of why we might do a morning update is when there's uncertainty about what the weather forecast is going to end up producing overnight. Yeah, great. And so the important thing following along with observations is that you can provide as much or as little detail as possible. And something else that's really important to know is we oftentimes get these many for observations when people are triggering avalanches, and we love it. It's awesome. It's great. But it's just crickets when there's no avalanches. And that's when we're wondering, okay, what's going on out there? Is just nobody talking, or, what exactly is happening? And so even if there isn't anything regarding avalanches that you're seeing out there, maybe there was 4 inches of new snow or 8 inches, but nobody was triggering avalanches. And you can tell us there's 4 inches of new snow. There was no wind. It didn't get, wind drifted at all. It got a little warm and the snow started getting a little heavy, or it was light dry powder. This is once again speaking all in snow slang, which is totally fine. As me, I jump in. Snow science uses metric for communication, and I jump a lot back and forth between metric and imperial measurement units, which might be a little confusing to people. I try to kind of keep it simple, and just in general, keeping it simple. Usually I speak in like inches and feet for this sort of thing, but I apologize. I do jump back and forth a little bit.
yeah, no
But
worries.
yeah, just simple observations with how much snow, if it was wind affected, you saw avalanches or you didn't see avalanches, and you entered steep terrain, but you didn't trigger any avalanches. That's pretty huge, useful information as well.
Yeah.
Um, Long shooting cracks, but no avalanches, or long shooting cracks and you stayed off of steep slopes, something like that. So even just little tiny bits of information like that are absolutely great for helping us to make better avalanche
Yeah.
forecasts that are more applicable to everyone out there. And then let's see, the one thing that's really important with the observations is like what we get the most out of for sure is photos. And once again, like photos of avalanches are absolutely incredible. But even if there wasn't an avalanche, if you can just show a photo of the amount of snow that built up on your seat while you were having lunch or something like that, that's so useful. Oh, they got like 3 inches in the half-hour break that they took from riding,
Yeah.
or just like, just scooping away with your hand the amount of new snow that there is, or something
Yeah.
like that. Any like little wind drifted features, any
Yep.
shooting cracks, anything like, showing wind blowing snow sideways,
Yep.
something like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
anything is so handy and useful. The whole, adage that goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, is very applicable for us.
Yeah, very good. And based on my own experience this yesterday, I'm going to recommend everybody create a checklist for yourself, right? And your checklist can be your morning checklist before you head out, and your afternoon checklist when you're getting ready to, pack away everything for the night. But include in those checklists, things like remember to bring a helmet to the snow park, right? So that would be one thing that would be important to remember. Not only that, but check the avalanche forecast as part of your routine as you're getting ready for your day and going out. And then at the end of the day, submit a forecast would be a perfect thing to have on your checklist as well, because I am personally guilty of early season December. I'm all fired up for the season, and I'm like submitting observations. I think the 3 or 4 first, like most of December, I think I submitted observations almost every time I went out. And then all of a sudden, I've noticed in the last month and a half here or so that I've not been submitting observations like I should be. And so calling myself out for that, and inviting everybody else to get on board also, and start submitting observations. Again, this goes for any Avalanche Center across the country, no matter where you ride. If you're in Oregon, you're in California, you're, anywhere you're at. So just please go ahead and help out and go from there. So Irene, I think we've covered a lot of great information today. I've, in the last few minutes here, I've come back to just you and I on the screen here again. I've minimized the Avalanche app. But is there anything that you want to kind of wrap this up with tonight? Anything else you want to make sure everybody knows before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think just one other thing to add quickly about the app is that it works so that you can submit an app when you're out of service,
Yep.
and then it should upload into the system once you get back into service. Have been a few little glitches that are still happening, even though we're working our way through it. It is a new app. We're just starting to run it this year. But if you do have any problems, you can go to the bottom and let's see here, it's just go to the more button at the bottom and submit app feedback in order to be able to help us out with being able to make a smoother running app that'll work for you if you do run into any problems out there.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, great. No, and let's see, as far as just finishing up, I think, what I just want to say is that what I really find super important and valuable, and what I really appreciate the most out of this job, is just finding out, or just appreciating the community. And that's the community amongst sledders and skiers and even hikers and snowshoers that, I feel like we kind of are, everyone's sort of got their different things going on, but it's all just appreciating the snow and getting out there,
Yeah.
enjoying the backcountry in different ways. And I've just been absolutely stoked to be welcomed into the sledding community. And it's been like a really awesome experience, and I'm just looking forward to more of it.
Yep, awesome, awesome. And the few things I'll add here too is that, what we talked you through tonight is just a very high level overview of the app and how to read it and interpret it. But I would tell you that to really get the most out of your Avalanche Center's information is go take an Avalanche class, right? It's like, you can go initially to awareness classes, companion rescue, but really where the rubber meets the road is your level 1 classes and your level 2 classes, those ones that are 3-day classes where they'll go deeper dive into understanding what are the different types of, like, we didn't go in tonight to about, all the different avalanche problems that are possible. We just mentioned, like, the one that's in there today is a wind slab, but you may not know that, like, how many is there? Is there 5, 6, 7, 10, 20? How many?
9.
9. See, guess what? You may not know that unless you have gone through an avalanche class and start to understand them. And the thing that I think most people underestimate, and the one thing I see over and over again, is that people look at the app or the website and they'll say like, "Oh, it's yellow today," and that's the extent of all they looked at. Right? They didn't really go in and read the details and understand it, because guess what? A moderate day of yellow It could be a really dangerous day, or it could be a somewhat pretty mellow day, right? It just depends on what the avalanche problems are versus where you're going to go with your day, right? And I think that's the whole point of this is getting the information, understanding the information, and then making good routing decisions based on your backcountry travel, based on the avalanche forecast, right? And I'll give you an example is I know many people who, as soon as the map turns red, everybody freaks out and they just stay home. I'm like, okay, I'm going up and I'm going to go shred the meadows because there's probably 3 feet of fresh powder in the meadow, not in avalanche terrain, and I'm going to have a blast all day, right? And I'm not in danger because I've figured out where I'm going to ride. I've changed where I'm going to ride. It's no different in like going, a bad snow day. I went from Crystal Springs Snow Park over to Blewett because I saw in the weather forecast that there was more snow over there. The avalanche risk, it wasn't that much different, but at the same time, I'm like, I can chase some snow, but I can do the reverse of that too. Like I can avoid more intense avalanche danger and go to a different snow park based on the understanding I have of what's going on. And like, I'll give you an example is one of the places that if the avalanche danger gets like considerable or high that I'll avoid, even though it's a really mellow riding area, is Blewett Pass. Because for me to get up to those really mellow riding areas, I have to drive right through something called Rock Slide. And that Rock Slide is a very well-known high danger avalanche area that goes right across the trail. And I have literally, over the history of my time, driven up the trail in the morning, I've been fine. In the afternoon, come down, and there's slides right across the trail. I've seen it 3-4 times over my 11 years of living here now. And I've just learned that, like, okay, if it's a high danger day or even a considerable danger day, I'm not bringing a group through there unless I really feel comfortable with that group that we can get around it somehow, which you can't do if it's just the trail because it's really hard to get around that section. And so just basic decisions you can make based on the information that you know and how you understand it. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I'm done. Are you done, Irene? What else you want to talk about? Anything else?
I think we can wrap it up there.
All right, sounds good. Well, I appreciate you being on. This is kind of like working overtime for you because you do avalanche stuff all day long, and now you just helped educate us again. So we're grateful for all of the hard work and the effort you put in. A personal thank you, and one of the reasons I invited you in is because Irene, in my opinion, is one of the forecasters here in Washington State, and I think probably across a lot of the nation that really has gone out of her way to really try to intentionally engage with the snowmobile community. Like I watch her in some of the local, Pacific Northwest Snowmobilers apps, some of the club apps, or not apps, but the pages and stuff like that that are here. She's visible, she's vocal, she's willing to show up at events. And so I wanted to offer that special invitation to come on and to engage with the community here and say thank you for what you've done to, make Washington and everywhere else a little bit better place anywhere you've been. So.
Well, thanks, John. I'm really honored that you are sharing that and appreciate it.
Yep. All right. All right. Well, what I tell everybody on every show as we wrap it up is thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Please share this out if you haven't already. Again, you're in to win on that first aid kit. And God bless you and live large. Have an amazing night.